Hello, sports fans. This is Anthony with Bleacher Bums Gaming, and we are here today. I'm very excited to unveil a prototype, the first prototype of Glory Days Boxing, which is one of two board game projects that I've been working on, probably simultaneously or back and forth between the two, for probably close to a year now, just fitting them in as I can, but boxing has always been one of my favorite sports, dating back to when I was a kid in the 70s growing up. I did box actually for a few years and have always been fascinated with the history of boxing. And in looking to design a board game, two things, and there's a few board games out there. Obviously the big one is Title Bout, and now most recently Title Bout 2. And Title Bout I actually was one of the first board games I bought. I believe when I was 15 back in 1978, I picked up a copy of that and spent untold hours doing that. And I definitely am not trying to replace that. That's kind of the marquee boxing game. Actually, one of the marquee board games, in my opinion, out there. But what I wanted to do with Glory Days Boxing is kind of capture I guess a different type of interaction between the fighters, as well as create a game that went primarily off the boxer's cards and had minimal use of charts. And I think I've got to the point where, like I said, this is the first prototype and will be the initial design that the release version is based on, with potentially a tweak or two as we go. But enough of the backstory rambling. Let's talk about the game and the basic parts and mechanics. So the necessary accoutrements for the game: red and blue six-sided die for the red and blue corner. And these two dice are rolled to establish fighting position and also ring generalship or control of the boxer they relate to, either the red or blue corner. The offensive dice, two 10-sided dice. Black represents multiples of 10, white multiples of 1, and then a 20-sided damage die. And this die comes into play to signal potential knockdowns and cuts. And then finally, the black 20-sided defensive die. And what this does, or what this die purposes serves, is to counter punch opportunities, block punch opportunities, things of that nature, if one fighter is in control over the other. So, and you'll see obviously as I do a little demo how these come into play with the game. So the game components themselves, pretty basic. The fighter cards, I just want to go over the different categories. So these are the fight position and control or ring generalship factors for each fighter. And you roll a 1d6 depending on the corner to get the position that the fighter is trying to fight in. So with Mike Tyson, he was a shorter heavyweight, powerful heavyweight, preferred to work on the inside, so the opportunities for him to work inside will be greater than outside. And you can see by these star ratings, and these range from no stars, 1 star, or 2 stars, with 2 stars being best. And that represents his ability to dictate the action in that particular fighting position. And you look at a fighter, Henry Cooper, the test tube leader. He's a more balanced fighter, so he has 3 of each. And then of course Muhammad Ali, who primarily was a boxer, could work inside, preferred to work at distance, use his jab, boxing ability, and movement to create space and land punches. So he has 4 outside versus 2 inside, and you can see by his star ratings, he is being the greatest. He is either not very good inside or good inside. And then outside, 3 out of 4 are a 2-star rating. And basically in terms of the ratings, the best you can get is 4 2 stars, and 1 star, and a no star. So Ali, Tyson, Dempsey, they're up there as good as you can get. And then it steps down from there. You see George Travalo, a very underrated heavyweight with probably the best chin in heavyweight history. Very solid fighter, but he's got 3 2-stars, 2 2-stars, and 1 star. Joe Grimm, which I'll talk about a little more in depth, probably one of the worst fighters to ever grace the ring. He is, give him credit. The gentleman, he fought over 150 fights, actually exactly 150 fights, according to BoxRec. Some actually credit him with up to 300 fights, but just was not very good. He could take a beating, but he's got a 1-star inside, a 1-star outside, and everything else is nada. So he's your basic opponent / tomato can. So that's how fight position and generalship is determined. Then you have your power ratings, and these are in basically 2 different columns on the card. So 8 is your basic power rating, and that is the fighter's ability for a knockdown chance is determined by the 1d20. So a roll on the 1d20 when the fighter is on offense inside of that 8 in the case of Tyson. 7 would be a potential knockdown chance. And you would then roll against the chin rating of his opponent for knockdowns. The number in parentheses is basically based on the fighter's finishing ability. And what that indicates is once a fighter is hurt, and that occurs when either you roll within the power range and do not get a knockdown, he would be hurt the next turn. Or if you roll within the power range and do score a knockdown, he would be hurt 2 consecutive turns. And during those turns he is hurt, if the fighter that scored the knockdown scores underneath the number in parentheses, then he has a knockdown chance there. So as an example there, Tyson knocks down Jack Dempsey. Dempsey gets up. He's going to be hurt for 2 turns. For the next 2 turns or segments within the round, Tyson, if he scored and landed a punch, a roll of 12 or less on the 1d20 would indicate a chance for another knockdown. So that's how that works. And then going to the right, these numbers represent the fighter's ability to score a knockdown when they are fatigued. So you see with Tyson, his initial knockdown or power rating goes down to a 5, and if a fighter is hurt or knocked down, it goes down to a 9 because he still has that killer instinct. Next rating is chin versus knockdown, and again the basics. So this would be the first time that a knockdown was checked. You would roll the 1d20 against this, and a 4 or less, Tyson would be knocked down. If he was hurt or had previously been knocked down, well, actually, if he was hurt, if he'd been knocked down, he'd be hurt for 2 turns. If he'd just been stunned, it would be hurt for 1. His chin rating would go up to a 7, so a 7 or less would result in him getting knocked down. And conversely over here, when he is fatigued, both his fresh and hurt ratings go up accordingly. Chin versus KO, just what it says. His ability to get up off the canvas. So when a fighter is knocked down, they would roll the 1d20 again. And if they rolled their KO rating or less, they would be knocked out. So Tyson's 5 when he is fresh, 8 when he is fatigued. Will is the ability to withstand a potential technical knockout. And the way that works, there's 3 possibilities for a technical knockout in the game. 1 would be any time during a round where the point differential or punches landed differential is 15 or greater between the 2 fighters. You would then roll for a potential TKO every time the fighter that was ahead by 15 or more landed, and continue to do that until that disparity got down under 15. The other time is when a fighter is hurt. If the next round, the fighter that hurt him, either by knockdown or just stunning him, lands a 4-point blow, which here are the punch indicators, and I'll go into detail on those. But if they land a 4-point blow in a turn when the fighter is hurt, that represents basically taking unopposed punishment, and you would roll for the TKO check there as well. And then the final potential for a TKO is with the boxing chart in the case of cuts, which I'll bring up when I get through these ratings. Cut rating is just that, fighter susceptibility to cuts. And Tyson is a 5. So on the offensive chart, when you land a punch, if the 1-die-20 is a 19 or a 20, a cut has potentially occurred if the fighter lands a punch. You would then check that, and there's a chart where you can determine what type of cut it is as well. And finally, the foul rating. Again, the fighters are rated based on how dirty they are in the ring. Tyson is not too bad despite his reputation. You can see a fighter like George Chuvalo, much dirtier. He fouls on an 8. And I think I actually have one of the prototype fighters. Jack Johnson, who was a masterful boxer, believe it or not, was also a high foul guy. He's also an 8. So that's the high range on those, and the low range, you see Muhammad Ali did not foul much. 2 or 3 are the best ratings you can get there. So that's the basic ratings. Let's quickly go over comparisons so you can see how these come into play. Talked about the cut rating. We've already compared fouls. So on the cut rating, again, Tyson is a 5. Henry Cooper, again known as the test tube leader, he had a high propensity for being cut. So his cut rating is a 15. And the way that cuts are determined once you roll inside that number is, again, and this is one of the differences between any other boxing game I'm aware of, here cuts and swelling as well as fouls are tailored to the individual fighter. They come off their card, not an actual generic chart. So you can see on Tyson's card, if he gets cut, or potentially cut, you go to the cut swelling chart, roll the 1-die-20 there, and you can see he cut, and this is the abbreviation: swelling left eye, swelling right, cut left, cut right, gash left eye, gash right eye, cut left cheek, cut right cheek, and bloody nose. And those, of course, would be in the instructions. But you can see Tyson's cut chance. He has a 4 out of 20 cut chance above each eye, and a 4 out of 20 gash chance above each eye. Go down to Cooper, and Tyson will develop swelling more than he actually cuts. Cooper does not swell as much, but you can see here he has 6 chances out of 20 to be cut and 6 chances out of 20 to be gashed, because he did bleed a lot. So basically there are 12 of his 20 injury opportunities on the cut swelling chart will be cuts or gashes. So that kind of, I think, brings a more realistic and fighter-specific component into the mix there. And same thing with fouls. And a good example there, actually let me pull out Jack Dempsey's card, because that kind of highlights what I want to, oh, he's actually already on here, excuse me. So Jack Dempsey, you look at Mike Tyson. Tyson did a lot inside with basically his head, and not much of a holder. So you see Tyson's fouls: low blow, headbutt. There's 6 opportunities for a headbutt there. Dempsey, the exact same, and he actually landed more low blows due to his swarming style. He went downstairs with hooks and uppercuts a lot. Neither one of these two are going to get worn much for holding. Okay. Muhammad Ali, on the other hand, not too much for headbutts, and the majority of his fouls are going to come from holding, which Ali was masterful at getting off, and if a fighter got inside, tying him up. So he's more likely to be penalized or receive a warning for excessive holding. So that's kind of how that works. And then also looking at his cut chart, Ali did not cut easily. So he only has 2 out of 20 opportunities for gashes above either eye, whereas Cooper again has 6 over each eye, or 6 total. And then 4 total opportunities to be cut. Ali's damage is going to come more from swelling or cuts on the cheek or even a bloody nose. So Chuvalo, Chuvalo also cut, and he was never knocked down in his career. So you can see his chin rating, it's basically 1. You need to roll a 1 die 20 to knock him down, which is pretty tough to do. Never off his feet in his career, never knocked cold. So his ratings do not change. If he's fatigued or if he's hurt, still 1 to knock him down, and still 1 when he's fatigued to knock him down. And he's probably got the best chin, like I said, in heavyweight history. So you have to have some opportunity to score a knockdown, but very, very unlikely with him. Whereas opposed to Joe Grimm, who is also equally tough to knock out, but goes down much easier. Or Henry Cooper, who goes down with much more regularity, but does not have a good chin when it comes to being knocked out. So those are kind of how the ratings are differentiated between the fighters. And same thing with power. Joe Grimm, you know, he scored 10 knockdowns of his 24 wins, only won 24 of 150. So not very powerful. Tyson, hit as hard a hitter as there is in the game. Henry Cooper, average. Ali, little above average. And Dempsey was not so much a heavy one-punch puncher. His knockouts, a lot of them came from accumulation of blows because he was such a tenacious fighter, ferocious inside, and he kept coming. And that's where you see, comparing his power rating to Ali's, both have 5 power, but because of his killer instinct ability or his ability to finish, Dempsey, when he has someone hurt, is much more likely to get a knockdown chance with a 9 versus Ali, who's only goes up to a 6. So that's kind of how the different ratings come into play and create matchups, and of course in boxing, styles create fights, and that is the purpose here. So let's talk about the chart. This is it. Like I said, I wanted to design a game that had minimal use of charts, and this is it, one single chart. And the only time you'll have to roll on this is for the event chart, and that comes on a roll of 99 on the fighter's card. So this would basically be rare instances. You can see here, each fighter warned for holding and hitting, each lands a punch, and 1 foul warning for each. Some basic stuff here. Clash of heads, check both fighters' cut rating. If within range, gash above eye occurs, and that would apply to both fighters. Injuries, fighter misses wildly, hurt shoulder, -1 from punches landed the rest of the fight. So what that would mean is whenever a fighter scored and landed, in this case a cross for 3 points, or 3 punches landed, that would become a 2. And then the rare event chart 2 has some even rarer things. So a 1 or a 20, you go there. And just sudden turnarounds here. This one was actually one that occurred in one of the last test fights I did. Fighter traps opponent on ropes, lands multiple blows, referee stops fight for TKO win. And I'll show you that fight. Here's a score sheet. This was Tom Sharkey against David Hay, and Tom Sharkey, a tough Irishman from 1890s, early 20th century, fought Jim Jeffries a couple of times, and they had absolutely ferocious battles. Sharkey was as tough as they came. And you can see here, he was winning the fight handily. He had knocked Hay down in the 4th round. Hay was warned for a headbutt in the 3rd. He'd opened a gash over Hay's right eye in the 5th, or 6th round, sorry. And had basically won every round heading into the 7th, where Hay caught him and not only knocked him down that round, but also opened a gash over Sharkey's right eye and scored 14 punches to 7. And you can see also here how their stamina is reduced as the fight goes on. And going into the 9th round, Sharkey had kind of regained control in the 8th. Hay was basically out of juice at this point. And what happened here is he rolled a 99 on his offensive card. We went to the charts and rolled a 1, went to chart 2, rolled a 19, and he got Sharkey hung up in the ropes and was able to land a flurry of vicious unopposed punches, rendering Sharkey helpless, and stopped the fight, even though he was losing handily and basically needed a stoppage to win. So that's how some of the rare event chart can come in and kind of turn the game around like that, which is a cool thing. Other things on the chart, the only other thing that you really have to roll for is at the end of each round, because boxing is subjective in terms of scoring. You see some crazy decisions. The Canelo Triple G fight last year was one example where Adelaide Bird apparently napped through several of the rounds and gave the fight to Canelo by an overwhelming margin, which was absolutely ludicrous. You see other robberies. The Manny Pacquiao lost to Jeff Horn also last year, and going back in late 80s, Pernell Whitaker losing to Julio Cesar Chavez, robbed. So bad decisions happen, and that's what this is meant to incorporate. So in a fight where they both land the same amount of punches or points, you would roll the 1 die 20 for each judge, and 1 to 5 red corner wins, 6 to 10 blue, 11-20 even round. If it's a 1 to 4 differential, 1 to 11 goes to the high, 10-9 round to the high score. 12 to 17, a 10-9 round to the low score, 18 to 20 even, and then it gets the disparity. As the disparity in punches grows, the chance for bad scoring also decreases. So 5 to 8 differential, 1 to 15 for the high score, only 16 to 20 for the low. And then once you get past 9 to 12, you're talking about potential 10-8 or even 10-7 rounds. The knockdown adjustment, so as an example, say Jack Dempsey is fighting Tommy Burns. He ends up winning the round by 3 punches landed, but he knocks Burns down. In that scenario, you would not even bother rolling for the judges, because a knockdown is automatically going to turn that round into a 10-8 round for Dempsey. If Burns had scored the knockdown as a low score, even though he lost the round by 3 punches, it would also give him a 10-8 round, because that's basically how boxing works. As you get up into the wider ranges here, you can see if the fighter losing, if he scores a knockdown, would only give him a 10-9 round because he was losing handily before that. The only other time you would roll is you track swelling and cuts and gashes, and you can see here the first time a gash is opened, you roll the 1 die 20 for a possible stoppage. If it's opened a second time, and that meaning that same eye, 1 to 10. Third time is 1 to 17. If it's opened a fourth time, it's over. Cuts, nothing the first time, 1 to 3 the second, 1 to 9, 1 to 15 the fourth. And same with swelling. As swelling gets increasingly worse, swelling can stop a fight. It has happened before if both eyes are swollen shut. And then a cut on the left cheek, very, very rare. That would have to be almost severed or open to the bone, where he's got like a 3-inch gash. And then bloody nose would never stop a fight. There is a really small chance the fourth time the nose gets bloody, and that would represent a severely broken nose where the fighter just was gushing blood, couldn't breathe, and probably wanted to quit himself. So that's how that works. Foul chart, mainly there is a reference, and it tells you warning, just low blows. First is a warning, second's a warning, third's a point, fourth is GQ. And that's basically the same for every foul except an intentional thumb to the eye, where you get 1 warning, then points, then DQ. And then also if there's 5 total fouls, if someone has 2 low blows, 2 elbows, and a headbutt, at that point they reach 5 total, that would be a point, and 6 would be a DQ, just to take into account fighters who fight dirty in many different ways. The only other things on here, the stoppage chart, and this will just give you the time of a TKO, whether it be early in the round, the first few segments, or later on. And then the ring timer, and each segment you count down. So first, there's 9 segments to a round, each represent approximately 20 seconds. And of course, the punch tracker. Okay. On the score sheet, slots for the judges. to be tallied. Punches landed each round. Reduction to stamina, which comes from the number of punches landed your opponents land. Injuries, this would be your cuts, swelling, etc. Fouls, and how many times a fighter has been knocked down. So that is basically it. That is the game in a nutshell, and we're at about 25 minutes now on the video. So I'm going to do just a quick sample here. We'll go through a couple of rounds just really slow, and I've got Jack Dempsey set to face Bob Satterfield. And Satterfield, he was a hard hitter, did not possess an extremely durable chin, and you can see here on his chin. He goes down on a roll of 10 on a potential knockdown. He does have some power, more power than Dempsey actually, and some good killer instinct. But will, not very good. Cutting about the same as Dempsey. And then offensively, and I didn't actually talk about the offensive portion of the card. So whether you roll an inside or outside, if you're in control, you will go to whatever column you roll. So say Dempsey rolls a 1, Satterfield rolls a 5. Dempsey's 2 stars will beat Satterfield's no stars. So Dempsey has offensive control, and he will roll on his inside column, the 2-die 10. And you see here he scores on rolls of 0 to 62, a miss 63 to 82, a clinch, foul chance, and then your event chance. And again, any punch landed where the 1-die 20 is 19 or 20 is a potential cut. And if the 1-die 20 is 5 or less, potential knockdown. His defensive ratings are down here, and these come into play. So Dempsey again has control, lands a 4-point hook. Satterfield rolls his defensive die, the 1-die 20 black die, and he is a terrible defensive fighter. He's never going to block punches, but he will add to punches because his defense is so bad. So he rolls a 4. Dempsey's 4-point hook becomes a 6-point hook, so 6 punches landed. Counter shots, same way. So if Dempsey misses, rolls a 62 or 67. Satterfield has a chance to counter. He is not a great counter puncher, so he'd have to roll a 1 to 3 to land either a 2-point hook or a 2-point cross. Dempsey, on the other hand, is a very good counter puncher. And if Satterfield were to miss, Dempsey could land a counter punch on a roll of 1 to 7 on the 1d20. So that's how that works. And then your punch types, J is jab, C is cross, H is hook, U is uppercut, and then again, miss, clinch, foul, and event. So that's basically it. So with that, let's walk through, and this probably will be, let's get the best view here for the camera. So I think this will be the best, best view here. So red corner, blue corner. And I'll just go through this sequence extremely slower, and you can see we've got our scoring and timing mechanism here. So to start the fight, the fighter in the red corner will be the one who is said if they have if they tie, and I didn't mention that, I apologize. If both fighters roll a tie, say both roll 4, they're both inside and 2, that means we have an exchange. So there's no defensive rolls. The fighter that either won the last segment of the round, or if it's the beginning of the round, or no winner has been established, would be the red corner. They roll first, resolve their offensive result. Then the second fighter rolls and resolves theirs. And we definitely will have that come up at some point, so we'll talk through that as it happens. So that represents both fighters just going in there toe-to-toe in the pocket. They're exchanging punches and not worried about defense. They're both basically going at it. So enough talk, let's fight. So first segment of the first round. So again, red and blue. So red represents Dempsey, blue Satterfield. So red, Dempsey is fighting outside, and he is in a position where he has applied his ring generalship. So outside, 2 stars. Satterfield inside, 2 stars. So right away we have an exchange. So no defensive roll. So Dempsey again being in the red corner, since we haven't established a fighter who is basically winning the round, he'll roll his first. So the roll is 18. And again, looking on his outside chart, that is a 4-point cross. All right. And again, because they're exchanging blows, Satterfield will not roll to his defensive die. Now also, you see he has rolled a 4, which is inside his power rating. So right away, we have the chance of a potential knockdown. So Satterfield, no defensive check at this time. He's basically just going to roll and see if he is knocked down. So 10 or less, Satterfield is hitting the canvas. And 12, and again, because he was not hurt during this segment or hurt in this segment, 10 is what you would reference it against. So he does not get knocked down, but he is hurt. Okay, so a 4-point cross for Dempsey. And Satterfield, since he was not stopped, then gets to resolve his part of the toe-to-toe exchange. And Satterfield, so we've got some fireworks early here. Satterfield was again going from the inside. And 40 is a 3-point uppercut. And Satterfield rolled a 6, which matches his power rating. So now Dempsey has to roll against his chin. 13, and he needed a 4 or less to hit the deck. So both fighters were rocked in that exchange. That's a great way to start a fight. But neither one went down. Now, since both fighters are technically hurt this round, that kind of cancels out the hurt effects, or doesn't cancel out. For both fighters, the hurt effects will apply because they shook each other up. So that's making things somewhat interesting early. So 5 and a 6, and again red, Dempsey's continuing to fight from the outside. Satterfield again goes inside, but it's a 2-to-1 star rating there. So that means Dempsey has applied his ring generalship and is in control of this round. So he'll get to the only offensive roll of this segment, and Satterfield will get a defensive roll. So Dempsey on the roll, and again outside, and this would be a potential knockdown again, but 50 outside, and that is not Dempsey's bailiwick. So he's going to miss that punch. And again, very happy this example came up because this power rating is going to apply to Satterfield now. So if Satterfield can land a counter punch, which he needs a roll of 1 to 3 to land, he can knock Dempsey down. And he does not, so both fighters miss. And second segment is over. We go to the third now. So we've seen a little bit of everything in terms of the mechanics early here. So now neither fighter is hurt. They're back to a fresh state. And 4 and a 5. So 4, Dempsey now works his way inside for a 2-star rating. Satterfield works from the outside and does not get any stars. So Dempsey again has control. So he gets the offensive roll and a roll of 46 on the inside, and again a potential knockdown. So Dempsey is unleashing the hounds here. 46 is a wicked 4-point uppercut. So first of all, Satterfield is going to roll his defensive check, and nada happens there. And he will now roll to see if he's knocked down. And again, no longer hurt, so he needs a roll of 1 to 10, and he survives. So Dempsey gets his points, and total punches landed in the round are now 8 to 3 as we move to the second minute of the round. Now again, Satterfield was hurt during that segment, so what we're looking for here is Dempsey's power rating goes up, Satterfield chin rating goes up, and also if Dempsey lands a 4-point punch in this exchange, we will check for a TKO because Satterfield is taking unanswered punishment. So Satterfield hurt, we do not do a control roll. All we have to roll for is to see where Dempsey is fighting from. And that is going to be outside. So he needs a roll of 0 to 46 to score, and 98 he misses, and he's going to land a punch, but he is potentially going to foul Satterfield. So we give him a punch there. And it's kind of funny, a lot of times these results, you'll go 2-3 rounds without a foul chance, and these are all many different things you'll run into in the game are all occurring in the first round, which is pretty unusual. So I'm glad though, because I can show them all to you. So Dempsey is going to roll on his card for a potential foul now. And I'm sorry, first his foul rating. He does roll under 5, so he did commit a foul. And 11 is going to be a headbutt. So on the score sheet, you will mark a headbutt for Dempsey in round 1. And he is warned for that, and we move to the next segment. So now Satterfield is no longer hurt. We go back to our ring generalship roll or control roll. 5 and a 2, Dempsey back outside, Satterfield outside 2, but 2 star to 1. Dempsey continues to be in control of the round. And a roll of 8 and 19, and good. I'm glad all this stuff is coming up. Possible cut now. So outside is a 3-point jab for Dempsey. And he's also closing in on a potential TKO for point differential. So Satterfield, first we'll get to do his defensive roll, which is a 3, and he adds a punch to that, so that makes it a 4-point jab. And now he is going to roll for the cut. So 5 or less, and Satterfield will have a cut or swelling. 5 or less, awesome, glad it's happening. You then go to his fighter-specific cut swelling chart, and he rolls a 3. That's swelling around his left eye. So a lot going on in this round, and Satterfield is already developed some swelling, and you can see from the cut swelling chart, first time, nothing happens in terms of referee or doctor intervention. So we are now on to the final segment of the second minute of the round. And obviously I'm going slow. You can fight a 10-round fight in this game in 30 minutes easily. And obviously if a fight ends sooner than that, whatever is the round that it ends in. So you could fight a fight anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes, a 10-round bout. 15 will take you 40 to 45 minutes if it goes a distance. So anyway, 4 and a 4 for our control rating. Dempsey works back inside, Satterfield works back inside. So they are going to go toe-to-toe again, no defensive checks in this one. And again, since Dempsey has been the fighter who won the last segment, he will go first on the check. So 17, and we have another potential cut, and working inside, Dempsey on a roll of 17, that lands a 2-point cross. And again, no defensive check, so Satterfield is going to check right away for another cut. And this time he does not get a cut or other injury. So that ends Dempsey's segment. Satterfield now does his exchange, and potential cut for him too, but a roll of 69 inside is going to be a miss. So that ends we're into the third minute of the round now. Dempsey's landed 15 punches, Satterfield 3. Dempsey could potentially get a TKO if he can land 3 or more punches in this exchange, and Satterfield does not. And one thing that hasn't come up yet, but on a clinch rating, basically nothing happens. If one fighter is in offensive control and rolls a clinch, there's no defensive or counter check. That's just a segment. If both fighters are exchanging punches and one of them clinches instead of throws, then both fighters score 0 for the segment. and just in case that does not come up. So 3 and a 5 now. So again, we'll go here. Dempsey is outside, and Dempsey is outside and has not established his ring generalship now. No stars. Satterfield is outside also, but they match. So once again, they're going to go toe-to-toe. And Dempsey is still the last fighter to win the segment, so he goes first. And a roll of 94 on the outside, and that's going to be a clinch, and that basically ends the segment. Doesn't matter what Satterfield does. So we will go to, there's 40 seconds left in the round now. 3-3, and that's going to be outside Dempsey, inside Satterfield. 1 star to no star, so Satterfield now finally takes control. And Satterfield, a roll of 69. And on the inside, that is going to be out of range. That's going to be a miss. So Dempsey now has a chance to counter. And again, a roll of 1 to 7 will be a counter. And that was a cut chance too. So Dempsey could have potentially cut him had he landed, but he did not. So no points scored there. And we head into the final 20 seconds of the round. And 6-1, inside for Dempsey, inside for Satterfield. Dempsey has a star rating, Satterfield does not, so Dempsey will control the last 20 seconds. And if he lands here, we could be looking at a potential TKO due to punch differential. So a 3 would have been a potential knockdown. 70 is going to be out of range, I can tell you that. So Dempsey misses, Satterfield gets a chance to counter. He needs a 1 to 3. And could be a potential knockdown if he counters him, but he does not. So that ends the round. So to close out the round, what you will do then is bring out the scorecard. And Dempsey scored 15 punches landed. So you'd mark those in the appropriate category there. Satterfield scored 3. Nobody was knocked down. Dempsey was charged with a headbutt, and Satterfield has swelling around his left eye. And you will now go to the judge's reference chart. And what this does is, again, a 12-point differential. It is going to be pretty much all Dempsey, 1 to 19, and 20. Adelaide Bird is going to give the round to Bob Satterfield. So just roll a 20-sided die, Dempsey, Dempsey, and Dempsey, which is expected and should have been how that round is scored. So you write the scoring down there, 10 to 9, and then you will make the stamina deduction. So Dempsey is a well-conditioned fighter. His stamina going into round 2 will drop to 97. Satterfield, not so much. And actually he is a 70. Excuse my misprint there. So his stamina rating will drop from 70 down to 55 going into round 2. So he's already put himself in a world of hurt. And we are at 43 minutes. And again, you know, as you play the game, the rounds do go much quicker. You can play, again, a 10-round fight in 30 to 35 minutes or less if it ends before the fight goes a distance. But that is basically it. An overview of the game mechanics in a sample round. I will later come back and do a video of a full fight. And we have, in the prototype version, I actually have 18 different fighters that I've already had cards printed out for. And we'll just go through the ones we have here. And if there's anybody you would like to see fight, please feel free to put their names in the comments. So we have Jack Dempsey, Bob Satterfield, Tommy the Duke Morrison. Great special on him on Netflix, I believe. Sad story. Definitely recommended looking at that if you're a boxing fan or a Tommy Morrison fan in general. Kid had it all and just could not harness any discipline. Very interesting, and again, kind of heart-wrenching look at what people can allow fame to do to them. David Hay, the near great British heavyweight who recently was stopped in his last fight, hence his 4th loss, and probably will be retiring. Evander Real Deal Holyfield, Frank Bruno, another hard-punching Brit. Great power. 8's as good as it gets in this game for initial power. Chin, not so good. Stamina, not so good, but when he was fresh, he was dangerous. Jack Johnson, one of the all-time greats, one of the greater defensive fighters. And interestingly enough about Johnson, 7 of those 13 losses came, oh my goodness, in his late 30s or after. His last fight, which he lost, was actually in 1938, I believe. He was 60 years old then and got in the ring in a sanctioned prize fight. So that kind of skews his greatness a little bit. He was a little bit chinny. He could be stopped. Again, he was stopped 7 times. The only time he was stopped in his prime was by a fighter named Klondike, who I'll actually, in one of my fights, do a little bit of a background story on, because I found him to be an interesting character. He was stopped by Joe Choinski, who was a great fighter in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Choinski stopped him in 1901, and Johnson actually credits him with making him into the boxer he was to become, or helping him go on that way. But Choinski was a vicious hitter, usually fought middleweight, more traditionally a light heavyweight, but he'd fight the big men too, as he did there. Tom Sharkey, the tough Irishman, who I talked about a little bit, had those epic fights with Jim Jeffries. Terrell Biggs, U.S. Olympian and heavyweight, you will probably remember from the 80s and early 90s. Tommy Burns, the man who Jack Johnson beat to become the first black heavyweight champion of the world, and they fought in Rushcutters Bay, Australia in 1908. It's credited in BoxRec as a 14-round decision for Johnson because police stopped the fight because they did not want to see they did not want the public to see film of a black man stopping a white man for the heavyweight championship, which was kind of sad, but it's a TKO. It's, regardless of how they have it listed, 14-round TKO win for Johnson. Burns was on his way down when the film stopped, if you ever watch that film on YouTube. Iron Mike Tyson could have been one of the greats. Again, kind of a Tommy Morrison story without the sad ending, fortunately. Mike Tyson is a misunderstood and great guy. I got to interact with him a little bit. Really is a cool cat. We all have issues. Joe Grimm, the human punching bag, 104 losses. He was stopped a handful of times, but usually due to the referee intervening. He actually went 6 rounds with Jack Johnson, lost a decision, took a horrific beating, but as you can see, he will go down, but he won't stay down. Cuts easily. Offensively, he is horrible. 1 to 29 from the outside the land, or 0 to 29, 0 to 39 inside the land. But you got to have those guys too. Your tomato cans. The GOAT, Muhammad Ali, obviously one of the, if not the greatest of all time. An exceptional defensive fighter here. 1 to 7, he blocks punches in some form. Great counter puncher. And underrated power, though he did not often sit down on his punches when he wanted to. He could. Henry Cooper, the test tube bleeder, who we talked about. George Travalo, best chin in heavyweight history. Joe Goss. Joe Goss was a fighter from the end of the bare knuckle era. Not a particularly skilled fighter. Only 3-star ratings in his ring generalship ratings, but again, getting a mix in this early stage. The last bare knuckle heavyweight champion, John L. Sullivan, 1 loss to Jim Corbett. Sullivan basically just made his living overwhelming and overpowering people. Not much on stamina. If you could drag him into deep water, which is what Corbett did, and stop him, he was vulnerable. Tough to knock down. goodwill, and he is a excessive fouler, so look for plenty of dirty play when he fights. And a terrible defensive fighter as well. Sullivan was a brawler in every sense of the word. And finally, Bob Fitzsimmons. Fitz was a natural light heavyweight, beat Corbett. He was one of the first great body punchers in the sport, famous for his solar plexus punch, which is what he stopped Corbett with to win the heavyweight title. And there is still, I believe, some grainy footage of that on YouTube. You know, tough to see much, but Fitz was if there had been a light heavyweight division when he was in his prime, the light heavyweight division was formed in 1903. You can probably quote me on that. I'm 99% sure. And if he had been around and in his prime, if that division had been around when he was in his prime in the 1890s and late 1880s, he would have probably reigned that division for some time. He was just an overmatched or undersized heavyweight, but still ferocious power, 59 KOs in 66 wins, and power of 7. He was also a little bit chinny. He could be knocked down and he could be stopped. And again, that was due to the fact that he was usually fighting bigger men. But you had to get to him before he got to you first. As you can see, he's a highly rated heavyweight, 3 2-stars, a 1, and 2 no stars. And if he was a light heavyweight, which when I do those fighters at some point in the future, I will probably re-rate him at, he will be much higher than he is here and much less vulnerable to knockout. So there you go. If any of those fighters intrigue you, you'd like to see them fight, drop their names in the comment. You know, Sullivan versus Fitzsimmons, whatever. You want to just see a mugging, Muhammad Ali versus Joe Grimm, whatever you want to see. If you have any questions about the game, comments, would love to hear them. Again, this is a prototype. As I move along, I will probably solicit a friend or two of the channel to help with some play testing. So look out for that, which of course would get you a free copy of the game once it is released, or actually if you're play testing, you have a free copy. But anything else you want to know, there are probably some things that I did not cover. We did get to see a TKO check, saw some knockdown checks, nobody was knocked down. And of course, only 1 round, so we didn't get into where fighters were fatigued or anything like that, or multiple cuts. But I was really happy, like I said, when I was playing through it. A lot of times, you know, I would go several rounds and not have a foul come up or not have a cut chance come up. So we got to see pretty much everything that can happen for the most part outside of a rare event in that first round. So, and again, just luck of the die there, and it's not something where you're constantly going to have that many events or you know, potential different things in every single round, because you won't. We just got lucky with this video. So again, thanks for watching, and if you have not subscribed and are interested, please feel free, recommend the channel to your friends, and thumbs up, like the video. And as I mentioned, any comments on this or anything else we do on the channel, please feel free to leave them. And thank you very much for your time. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep rolling for the fences. Have a great day, all.